Alright, welcome, and today we're going to be working on the new RowJoeBee. The RowJoeBee is our main character from the Bugillagers. He is the primary character, and we did have another artist come in and attempt to do some animation, and they created a different look for RowJoeBee, but they ended up quitting, not really accomplishing anything with their version. So we're converting back to the original concept of what RowJoeBee should be. So what we're going to do today is work on start to add the actions to the character for the hands to begin with. So let's go ahead and bring up the character here. So this is RowJoeBee, the new version, and what I've done is I've rigged the character up, the puppet, for all the bones, so we can animate the character right now just by moving things around, picking the arms and the legs up and moving things around like this. So we can move the head and the antennae, we can move the legs and the feet, and everything can be basically done right now, just basic actions. But we want to do more. We want to be able to make the mouth move. We want to blink the eyes. We want to be able to rotate the arms around the torso here. And we want to be able to move the abdomen around so you can see the stinger maybe, and that the bee can move the abdomen up and down. That's what all these controls are going to be over here. But before we do that, we need to do the hands, and there's lots of ways animators do hands. A lot of them use a preset group of 7 or 8 different poses. Similar with the mouth, they'll do 7 or 8 different poses and simply flip between those. That's quite fine. That comes from the old animation type of animating back in the day when I was a child. Every single change had to be drawn out by hand, and so to move this arm from here to here, they started using overlays, plastic overlays that were clear, and so they could do part of the character and animate just one section, and they would draw each different position. So the arm like this would be a different drawing than the arm just slightly different like this, and it would, maybe the rest of the character would stay the same, but they would have a layer that would be just the arm. Well, and we're doing the same thing here. Everything has its own layer, and the more layers you go with, the more control you get. And what we're doing with the hands is getting as much control as we can, so that we don't have to draw a bunch of static drawings and be limited to those drawings. So what I'd like to do here, you can see I've got the 3 fingers on each hand, and if you notice, the bones have all been colored so that the blue ones, the forefinger or the first finger, the cadet blue is the middle finger, and the coral is the little finger. The thumb I didn't bother to color because it's separate and down here, and the palm is here so that we can move things around. What we're going to do now is go to the first hand here, and we're going to start creating our manipulation of the fingers, because right now, yes, we can turn the fingers left and right and bend them at the joints here, so we can already do quite a bit with each of these fingers. But what I'd like to do is be able to have them fold down into the palm of the hand when we're looking at the hand facing us. And to do that, we want to shrink each finger first to a minimal point and then stretch it back into the palm of the hand. And so for that, I've created a lever bone here for each finger. Let's go ahead and reset everything back to normal. So if you see, we can zoom in. The pinky finger is the finger that's actually centered on the palm of the hand bone. But what I have over here is the index finger, the middle finger, the pinky finger. So top to bottom is index, middle, pinky. Alright, so each one of them is colored exactly like that. So the process I'm going through to do this hand, I'm going to duplicate on all 4 hands, but I'm only going to show you this first one because it'll get boring if I was to sit here talking and showing you the exact same process 4 times. So here we go. We're going to start with the index finger. So we zoom in here and we grab the index controller, so the one that controls the index finger getting longer and shorter, and we're going to create an action for that. An action is simply a miniature animation that you get to use over and over and over again. And you can use all the features of Moho to create these actions, so they can be quite powerful. So we're going to start with this one, and we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible. So we're going to rotate it down to the minimal position that we've got. I've set the constraints on these bones to -3232, which gives me 64 possible positions for this lever to be in. So that means I want to go to 64 here and rotate this up. So now there are 64 different possible outcomes for where that lever is of what is going to be happening in this miniature animation of only 64 cells. Okay, so we go back to 64 and we're going to grab the 2 index bones. So we zoom in here and hit B for bone, grab the index bone and scroll out, and then scroll back up in here, and we want to get the blue one. So when we know we've got it isolated, we hold shift and we grab it. So now we've got both of the blue index finger bones selected, and what we're going to do is change their length, and we're going to extend them by 1.3, so they're going to be longer than normal at this point. So now that finger is longer. Then we go back to 32 and we hit reset, and it resets the finger to the normal length. Now we want it to come all the way down into the palm of the hand, so we rotate to the lowest position for the control lever, and then we're just going to simply rotate this bone straight down. So we drag it to the right, make sure we've got that one, and we can hold shift to force the straight down position. So now we've got the finger stretched down into the palm of the hand, but we don't want it to be rotating like this to get to there. So we're going to go to 16, which is the halfway point where we want it up and down, and we want to rotate it back up at this point so that it's definitely up, and then we're going to drop to 15, and this is where we want it to be straight down. Then back at 16 we want to select both bones again, so we scroll in, we've got B for bone, we select the first one, we scroll up to the top and hold shift and select the second one, and now at 16 we want to reduce the length of the finger to 1/10, so 0.1, and so now our finger is very short here. And then if we move to 15, it should still be very short, but now it will extend itself into the palm of the hand, just like that. Now we've got that finger going from the top position, the stretched position, normal, folding downward into the palm of the hand, and folded all the way in. So we're going to do that on each finger. So we're done with the index. Let's go back to the main line. Now we're going to choose the middle finger. So we go to the zoom in here on the control. We know that the middle finger is cadet blue. And if you've watched my other videos, you know that I order my colors in the order that the parts should be in at their normal rest state. When I look at the eyes, so here we've got the right eye and the left eye. Each of them have a different color, so I know this is the left eye, this is the right eye. But when we go inside each of them, the colors inside are the same. For top lashes are both blue, bottom lashes are both cadet blue, upper lid are both coral, lower lid are both green, shine are both orange, our pupil is both pink, and eye is both purple. So you can see that those colors also are used up here for bone colors. So when we select a bone, we can change its color, which I have done on these bones. So these colors go in the same order here as they do over here. So as we use the bones and color them, we can keep idea, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. So now we're doing number 2, the middle finger. So we're going to create an action for the middle finger and make sure that we've got the right name for the bone. And then we're going to rotate down for the minimal position, jump to 64 for the maximum position. Then we choose B for bone. We select the bone here and we go up above and select the bone using shift so that we have both bones selected. And now we can say we're going to stretch those to 1.3. So we go 1.3. And then at 32, we're going to reset that scale. And we're going to reset everything else just in case we make accidental motions elsewhere. Then we're going to jump down to 16. At 16, remember, we want 0.1. And then it will automatically go back to stretching itself from there. So now what we want to do is at 16, when it's shrank down to 0.1, we're going to hit B for bone, and we're going to grab the bottom of those two bones only, and T to transform the bone. And I like to hold shift and ensure that it's straight up and down. And then we're going to drop down to 15. And again, holding shift, we're going to rotate that bone straight down. There we go. So now the bone stretches up and stretches down. So now we can go back down to the main line and zoom in. And now we're going to do the coral one, which is the pinky. So we're going to grab the bone, create an action, double check that it's the top right pinky stretch. All right, there we go. I zoomed out too far. Let's zoom back in here. So now we're going to grab the control bone here and rotate it all the way down for the lowest position. Then we're going to jump to position 64 in the animation, and we're going to rotate it up. And now we're going to grab the coral bones. So we zoom in here, hit B for bone, grab that bone, zoom out, zoom into where we can see the coral one on top, hold shift and select it. So now we've got both. We're going to stretch because we're at 64. We want the fingers to be 1.3 times longer than their rest state. We go back to 32, which is the center of the control lever, which is where it will return to naturally during animation. And so there we're going to use it to reset, reset, and reset. And then we're going to go to 16. And at 16, our scale is going to be 0.1 for both bones. And then we're going to choose B for bone and choose just the bottom one. And hit T for transform. Hold shift. Make sure it's pointing straight up. It is. And then move down to 15. And holding shift, we're going to rotate that bone straight down. Then we go to position 1. And again, we rotate it straight down. So now between 1 and 15, the bone shrinks. At 16, it flips around the other way and stretches. At 32, we're at the rest state. And then at 64, we've stretched the finger by just short of 1/3. So now all 3 fingers are fully functional. We can go in and test each one by moving the levers like this. So that finger is definitely moving up and down. This finger is definitely moving up and down. And this finger is definitely moving up and down. So we've got all 3 fingers functional, and we can still manipulate them when we're in the animation layer. You'll notice I cannot move them with the manipulate bone tool right now because they are constrained by this bone here. If we get it just at center, it might let us move these. Yes. So when we're at the center point and we're at the neutral, where we've reset each finger inside the mini animations, these actions, now we can move these bones like this. And we can then move this to keep it that way. So there's a lot you can do, and there's a lot being done. But as you can see, these fingers are not working now that I'm trying to work them. One of them is, but the other 2 are not. So what was going on there? Why did it not work and then suddenly it's working? It has to do with the way the Moho program is conserving memory. So as we're zooming out and zooming in, Moho is saying, what is this program really concentrating on right now? And because this bone is highlighted, this is the area that is going to have the most memory detail, the one finger I was working on. But the other 2 had been reduced to not being updated in memory, like just right there, because it's trying to conserve memory. And we're also in the construction layer. If we jump into the animation layer, now Moho is preserving more memory to actually what's happening for each cell. So now each finger is going to respond while I'm here. But if I was to do a bunch of animation through here, moving each of these hands around and arms and face and everything, and then I was simply moving through it, you would see a lot of things that would not be animating properly because we're in the construction function of building our animation. We can go to display quality, change it to preview. That'll get rid of the bones and preserve more memory to making everything look just as it should while we're animating. But if you want to see your bones and manipulate them easily, you want your detail to be at medium. So let's continue. We've got the 3 fingers. Now we're going to rotate the hand so that we can use those fingers folding down into the palm of the hand. So we're going to select this bone. We're going to create an action for it. So this is the hand twist. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to rotate this hand bone all the way to the left. And this is going to mean that we're going to rotate the palm out where the thumb is pointing away from the palm of the hand. Then when we jump to 64, we're going to rotate it all the way the other way, and then the thumb will be pointing inward towards the face. So we're going to zoom in now. We're going to start making those changes by using just the bones. We don't want to change all the parts at this point. We only want to change bones at this point. So first we're going to move these fingers apart from each other. Since the thumb is going to be pointing this way, we need the index finger, which is blue, to be coming towards the thumb as well. So we're going to zoom in here close to the base of the 2 bones for the forefinger, and we're going to hold shift down and grab this little spot and drag that bone as far right as we can, even off the edge of what we can see here with menu over here. So then we're going to do the same thing with the blue one here at the bottom. We're holding shift and we're going to drag that as far right as we can. Then the middle finger stays where it is, and the pinky, which is the coral color here, we're going to hold shift and drag it to the left. And the same with the bone at the base of the two joints of that finger. So now we can zoom out and we can see that we've got those where we can get a hold of them and continue to move them where we want them. So now I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to bring this finger, and what I want to do is have a separation of the finger of about the same thickness as our stroke here. So what I want to do is bring this edge of the stroke to right here. So I'm going to pick this bone up again and just move it on over to where that edge is right there. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other bone. I'm going to bring it on over, and I want it to be about one stroke thickness away from the other finger. Then we're going to bring the control bones that makes them shrink and stretch on over to be at the base of the finger, so that when we need to use it during animation, it's where we expect to find it. So I'm going to have to zoom in here to get that one by itself. Keep grabbing the wrong bone. There we go. So now I can move that on over, and we simply bring it on over to the base of the finger here. So now we've got our fingers separated as much as they should be, and now we're going to bring the thumb over so that it is basically right below the forefinger, but not quite. So holding shift, bring it over about right there, and then we're going to hold shift again and rotate it to a 45-degree angle. Now we've got all the bone work done to position the finger and the hand open, but as you can see, the palm is not open. So we need to go to the palm of that part of the body. So let's close out all these that we're not using. So we're going to go to the top right arm, and we're going to click on the palm of the hand, and so there it is, and then we're going to hit T and click in the center of it. That lets us select the entire hand, and I'm holding Alt, and while I'm holding Alt, I'm going to stretch the palm out until it comes in contact with the edge of the forefinger here. And so now we can see that the forefinger is touching the palm of the hand, the thumb is right inside the palm of the hand, and the little finger is just outside a little bit. So let's go back to the bone layer, and we're just going to bring that little finger in just enough so that the dark lines overlap and touch right there. So the palm of the hand, we're looking at this right here, we want that to be right where they're just barely touching, like that. So now we've got our palm of our hand stretched out this direction, and we're going to need the palm to look like this and the other direction as well. So when we select the palm, we've only got the controls here for the palm. So that means we can copy this with Control C, jump to number 1, Control V, and now we've got the hand stretched out for the other direction. Now that it's going this direction, we're going to need to move the fingers. So again, we want the thumb to come out to the edge and rotate 45 degrees. So it looks like I went a little too far. We bring it right to there. And then we zoom in, and we're going to move the forefinger, which is the dark blue one, to the left because it's going to the direction of the thumb. We've got to get that dot on the blue one, so we might have to zoom in, then holding shift, drag to the left. Do the same with its control bone. And it's best if you go as far as you can because we're zoomed in. Spaces are not as different as they seem. Then we're going to grab coral, which is the pinky, and move that bone on over. And just like that. And now we scroll out and we can put those in the right places. So now we scroll this on over to the edge, but oh, wait a minute. We've got the long edge inside. We're going to have to fix that. Well, how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of ways we can do it, but let's just go ahead and get these bones placed first, as close as we can. They don't have to be exact yet. So we're going, well, we want that over here, and we want this over here. So we could go into each finger here and flip this base around and do it that way, and that would work. But there's another neat feature that I like to use for this, and that is where we choose this bone here that controls this finger, and we use the flip bone tool. Now, don't think that this flips the bone left to right and that this flips the bone top to bottom. It does not. This flips the bone end for end. So from the tip to the base, in this case, would be flipping if we use this one. But if we use this one, it flips it left to right in this condition. But if we were doing it to this one, it would be flipping it up and down. So understand that this flips the ends of the bone and this flips the sides of the bone. So we want to select this bone with hitting B for bone and select this one, and we're going to flip it side to side. Now if you watched, you would have noticed that the bottom and the top of the finger flipped with that one action. So you see there, both the top and the bottom are flipping. So we're only affecting one bone, but the bone below it, a child bone, gets flipped as well. So now we're going to do the same thing on this bone, and we're going to flip it. So the finger is now flipped properly. And now we go back to the bones, and we can move them to where we know we want them to be, holding shift and just to where they're overlapping slightly. I guess I had it where it was. So right, it's hard to get right exact. So when you have trouble getting exact, just zoom in. It gives you much more control. So then we do the same thing over here. We bring that pinky to right where the overlap is bare, just barely there. And we put that in the right position, and we put this in the right position. So now we've got where our hand is rotating, and then now they're backwards this way. So at 32, where we do resets on everything, we actually have to select the bone and change it back. At 32, we want to grab this bone and flip it, and then we want to grab the blue bone and flip it. And now we want to grab all these bones because we're at 32. We want to grab all these bones and reset them all. So we want to reset their length, their scale, and their angles. So there we go. And why did the thumb not reset? Oh, I didn't select it. So B for bone, grab the thumb and also reset it for the length, the position, and the angle. So now we've got to go into the palm of the hand and select the object that is the palm of the hand and reset it. So now we can rotate our hand this way and this way. Okay, so both directions. Got a little cleanup here we can do, but that's basically how we do the layout of our hand that is now very dynamic. So we don't have to create a new drawing for every hand pose that we want. We can simply pose the hand to do what we want. We can now go into the animation level, do anything we want to any of these fingers to create any pose of any hand shape and position that we want. So, peace out. I will now do the other 4 hands, and when I'm done, I'll come back and we'll begin doing the actions for all of these bones here on the right. So all of the bones on the left are all now completed, except for the other 3 hands, and these will be the next step. So when I come back, these 4 hands will be done, and you'll be able to see what's going on next. Alright, and I'm back. So now I've got all 4 hands programmed to be manipulatable, and here's the results. So if you watch each hand, you can see that each one is doing different things, making different hand poses, and we're able to do quite a bit. So there's practically nothing we can't do now. Create any hand pose on the fly at any moment. And we don't have to draw a new one out each time we want a different hand position or shape. We're now ready to start programming each of these bones over here. Now this bone we don't program. The first bone in the character here, this is the bone that we move the character around with inside of its layer. Now you really don't want to do that, and I'll show you why. So imagine we wanted to move the character across the screen and make it rotate while it does. So we're going to start at position 1, and we pick up its layer and we move it over here, and then we jump to say 144 and we move it over here. And at this point we will want it to have completed a rotation, so we're going to just rotate it around just like that. Okay, and then holding shift we can get it straight, so it's exactly straight like it was. So if we go to the animation and play it, you can see the character is rotating on his solar plexus. Okay, but if we do it the other way, let's eliminate these animations, and now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to change by using this bone to manipulate the character inside of its layer. So we go to position 1, we move the character to the far left, we go to 144 and we move it to the far right, and now we want to rotate it. Now we go to the layer and we rotate the character, but you can see it's not rotating on the character's solar plexus anymore. It's rotating from the character's origin, which we have changed by moving this bone. It would be the same if we were moving the character from the center here. If we were moving it in the layer, you know, within the layer by using this control here, it would still be not moving the origin. So if we look at this animation, instead of the character rotating on his solar plexus, he's making a spiral to get where we want. You know, and we may want to do that at some point. That's my point, is generally you don't want to move your character around unless you're looking for special effect by changing its position inside of its layer. You want to move it around in the scene by moving the layer. Definitely animate the character, but try to keep the character centered on the origin so that our solar plexus, or our center of the object, remains the center of the object throughout the animation. And as you can see, it's not what's happening here. So again, we're going to get rid of all that and just go to animation, clear animation from document. Now all of that's gone. So we're not going to do any programming to this bone here. It being parented to and everything else being parented to it gives us the control to move everything together. So if we look at the parenting, you can see that other than the bones that are linking to the character's central core, all these bones are linked to this one bone, so that when we move the layer, these bones move with it. If we move the character, these bones move with it. Either way. But generally we want to move the character around in a scene by moving its layer, not by moving its central position. Alright, so now we're going to move to the next bone. So we'll start with this one. We'll create an action for it. This is the abdomen up and down. So we're going to create a new action and tell it OK. So at the rest state, the character is going to look like this. When it's stretching the bone down, so we want to move this all the way down for position 1, then we're going to bring all of these points down. And then when it's up at 64, now we're going to move them all up. So let's go ahead and just start doing that. We can zoom in really close so that we can just see the top 2 of these points, because they are evenly spaced throughout. As we do what we're going to do right now, we can do it all from here. So we're going to grab Shift, click this bone, and drag it straight up. Now, so that we don't lose control of which bone is which, I'm going to put each one just one line length below the one in front of it. So that's going to be right there. Then we just pick up the next bone and we drag it up and we do the same thing. It's going to be one line below the one that I just set. And I just keep doing this until all of these are laid out in order in the center here. So you can see that as I laid these bones out, even though I used the grid to lay them out, they are not in order directly lined up with each other. I think Moho does that on purpose to help us keep everything separated so we don't end up automatically overlapping them all. We could overlap them. It would take a little bit more work, but we could force them to be exactly where we want them to be. But we need to do that before we start creating an action, because when we create the action, we're actually setting where these these objects are, each one of them. So now we can zoom out so we can see that the abdomen has raised up. So if we basically got rid of everything in front of it, it would be a target. So let's see here. Let's shrink all these down so I can see which part is which. So let's get rid of the thorax and the legs and the arms, and you can see that we basically end up with a target. So when it's raised all the way up, our B is straight in a line going back. So now we drop down to 1, and we're just going to do the opposite of what we just did. We're going to just stretch each one of these downward. So this time we can't bring them to us, we have to go to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the top one where the top of the circle is right at the edge of our screen, and we can see that we start in the center. So we're going to hold Shift and we're going to just drag it down till it touches the bottom. Then we right click and drag this until we see the next spot. We get that in touch with the top and bring the one below it all the way down. And I'm holding Shift so that I'm not dragging these left or right. So we right click now and just drag down until we see the next one. And we don't have to worry about keeping these in line while dragging down, only while we're changing the position of each of these pin bones. So right click, drag, And by using the screen like this, we're guaranteeing that we're expanding each of these portions of the abdomen in the same percentage amount. Or basically, we're just doubling the length, whereas before we eliminated the length. That to there. Bring this one down. And we just stretch each one of these downward. Again, I'm using shift to make sure I keep them in line with where they were originally. And there's the last one. So now when we zoom out, you will see that the abdomen has been extended all the way down. So we can now go from the one extreme to the other, up and down and back to the center. And now at the center, we want to grab all of those bones. So B to grab bones. We grab all those circle bones. And we didn't move the central one, so we just reset them so that we make sure that at 32 we've released them. It's not about where they're positioned, it's about releasing them from being affected by this bone when we're trying to affect it with other bones. So there we've got the abdomen up and down is finished. And if we go to the character and test it, boom, it's working. So there we go. So now we need to do the left and right abdomen. So we click this one, make sure we're in the construction layer and the bone layer here. We hit this and create a new action. Make sure the name, abdomen left and right, is what we want. We go OK. We're going to rotate the bone all the way to the left for the minimal position. Jump to 64. And that will be the maximum position. And in this case, we're just going to go left and right with these bones, just like we did up and down. So we've got to zoom in here. And we're going to want to bring them over exactly the same amount for each one. And the same amount in each direction. So we're going to use the edge of this side flip bone tool to give us where our center needs to be each time. Then we're holding shift and we're going to drag these to the right and touch the edge here. So then we bring this one up. Using the right button, we click and bring this up. And we put its center in the center of the edge of that flip bone tool. Hold shift and drag the next one on over. Right click drag. Shift drag. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks like it'll work. Right, so right click drag. Pop it there. Shift drag this way. Right click drag. Center it on that tool. Bring it over. So there we go. So there's the stinger. Right before the stinger. So sometimes, depending on your artwork, you may need to not stick to 100%, you know, matching scale. So sometimes we just want to make it look right. So there we go. So we go back to 32. And we want to reset all of the bones we may have selected and touched. So we can just grab everything there. And then we're going to just reset, reset, reset. And now we go to 1 and choose B for bone, and we're going to do the basically the same thing we did the other direction. So first we're going to jump to the other direction, and we're going to set our scale. So if this is the edge, looks like our point, let's I'm going to just stick a post-it note on my screen that shows me exactly where I want that bone. So I'm setting it with the corner in the very center of the circle in the center there. So now I need to put my center bone there, and each bone needs to be moved to the edge over here. So now we want to be to the far left. And there we go. We're going to bring this bone with shift all the way to the edge. This is just to get our basic beginning layout of the character's bones. And for the abdomen, going to the character's right, our left. Let's bring this up here. Bring this on over here. Bring this one up here. Over. And up and over. Over. There we go. So there's our stinger, and again we're trying to use artwork, so we do have to make adjustment. So let's bring that out a little, bring that out a little more, and we'll bring this one in, and the stinger out. There we go. So we just make our, I'm moving that marker off the screen. So now we've got our full right, back to center, full left. So there's our character can move the abdomen either direction. So now we're going to go back to the main line and test it out in the animation layer. So we go into animation and we twist the torso one way and twist it the other. Twist again like we did last summer. So we can make the bee dance and shake flowers. I don't know if you know, but that's how bees harvest pollen. They get on a flower and they shake until everything falls, and then they go and pick it up. We can now create a bee with all its parts that do the right things. Alright, so we're going to move on to the next bone. So we delete that. And what do we got? These wings are already done, so we don't need to do that. So the bottom one here, create an action. This is going to be the legs twist. And what I'm going to do now is use reference layers. So right here I have my left leg and my right leg for the character. And instead of recreating them and Vitruvian boning it, I created reference layers. There's a left leg reference and a right leg reference. And as you can see, when I click on it, it shows you that this is the target for this leg, and this is the target for this leg. So I'm not going to rename these to something else because these were created by the program by creating reference layers. So what I can do is cause this layer to go invisible, leaving this one behind in the back. I need to be in the bone layer and this bone, and now we're going to create the action for legs twist, and that means twisting around the torso there, the thorax. So we're going to move it all the way to the left for the minimal position, jump to 64, move it all the way to the right. So when it's all the way to the right, this leg will then be behind the body is what we're after. So that means we want the left leg here to be not visible at this point. It's going to come around to 48. At 48, we go to the bone layer, and we're going to move that leg, holding shift so that it goes straight. We go right to the edge of the body where it's just barely touching, where the fur here and the fur there are touching each other. So there we go. And then when we get to 32, it's going to be reset for its position. And we'll go ahead and reset scale and angle in case we accidentally touch some other feature of the bone. Then when we get to 16, this bone will be at the edge here, and this bone will have come across to there, just touching the center here. And then we get to 1, and we reset this one, and then this one would be all the way, and we'll just make them barely touch, even though they're one's in front and one's behind. We'll make them just barely touch there. Then we come back to 64, and we need to do the same thing here. So this gets reset for position, and then this one comes all the way over to where it would be touching that one. So let's see. And then from here on, we want the right leg to be invisible, but the right leg reference to be visible. So now our reference legs, because they're below the thorax, they end up behind the thorax, and our initial legs are here above for when we want it in front. So now that leg should be behind all the way to here. So we still want this one to be visible. Whoops. Want this one to be visible, but we want this one to be invisible. And then apply. And I guess we have to put the visibility on the reference layer after we make the original layer invisible. So we can do things to the reference layer separate from the initial layer, but if we make a change to the initial layer, it applies to the reference layer at that moment. So any changes you make should be made to the reference layer after. Okay, so right here, now we want the front leg to be visible again. And now it can move on over, and then the other one should be going behind as invisible. So this leg at this point should not be visible, but the reference leg should be visible. And, okay. And now we can move this on around, and it shouldn't be disappearing right there. So let's make sure that it's still visible. Alright, so now let's test the entire timeline. And I don't know why I keep losing one or the other. Alright, so right here, there, the right leg 2 should become visible and remain visible through to here. So here we go, we can now rotate the legs around the body, just as if we were moving the layers. And we've reserved the moving of the layers, which we can only do with one action, for the arms. So that's the end of part 1 of recording the actions for RowJoeBee for use for animations. So tune in next time when we move forward and start working on the arms rotating around the body. Please visit dangeraware.org, and if you can, give us suggestions on how to make things better. And if you can afford to, please donate $1. Every dollar helps to go to prevent abuse by educating the young and vulnerable through play and entertainment. So please visit www.dangeraware.org and help us however you can. Thank you so much, and tune in next time.